In the heart of Tenochtitlan, beneath the towering temples and bustling markets, a secret governed the fate of an empire. While the world saw the mighty Huitlahuachtli, Montezuma II, as the supreme ruler of the Aztecs, a hidden force shaped the empire's destiny. This force was not one man, but four. The Aztec Council of Four, a secretive group of high-ranking nobles, held the real power. Their decisions dictated war and peace, wealth and famine, life and death. Yet their names are lost to history, buried beneath the grandeur of imperial rule. How did this council come to exist? Why did it operate in the shadows? And what role did it play in the rise and fall of one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world? The answers lie deep within the tangled web of Aztec politics, where loyalty and betrayal walked hand in hand, and power was never what it seemed. The Aztec Empire did not rise from a single ruler's ambition alone. It was forged in the crucible of war, diplomacy, and shifting alliances. In the early 15th century, the city of Tenochtitlan stood as just one of many competing city-states in the Valley of Mexico. The dominant power at the time was the mighty Teutonic Empire, led by the formidable Tenochtitlan. Under his rule, smaller states were forced into submission, paying heavy tribute and offering warriors to his cause. But when Tenochtitlan died in 1426, his empire began to fracture. His sons fought bitterly for control, and in that chaos, an opportunity arose for the Mexica of Tenochtitlan. The Mexica had long been seen as outsiders, a people of humble origins who had migrated from the north and settled on the marshy islands of Lake Texcoco. They had built their city with determination, but they lacked the prestige of older civilizations like the Toltecs or the powerful city of Texcoco. Yet they had one advantage: their leaders understood the value of alliances. In 1428, the rulers of Tenochtitlan, Itzcoatl, and his nephew, Montezuma joined forces with the city-states of Texcoco and Tlacopan to form the Triple Alliance. This alliance would become the foundation of the Aztec Empire, and it was within this new political structure that the Council of Four first emerged. The Triple Alliance was more than a military pact. It was a carefully balanced system of power. Each city-state retained its own ruler, but together they formed a coalition that could dominate the region. The spoils of conquest were divided among them, with Tenochtitlan gaining the lion's share. As the empire expanded, the need for a governing body that could coordinate military campaigns, manage tribute, and settle disputes became clear. The traditional model of a single ruler making all decisions was not enough. Thus, the Council of Four was born, a secretive and powerful group that ensured the empire ran smoothly even when the emperor was absent or incapacitated. This council was composed of the most influential nobles in the empire, often drawn from the royal families of the three allied cities. Its members were not publicly known, and their deliberations were kept behind closed doors. Yet their influence was undeniable. They advised the emperor, approved military campaigns, and oversaw the collection of tribute. In times of crisis, such as when an emperor died without a clear heir, the council played a crucial role in selecting the next ruler. This system allowed the empire to maintain stability even as rulers changed and external threats loomed. The formation of the Council of Four marked a turning point in Aztec history. It signaled the shift from a loose alliance of city-states to a centralized empire with a sophisticated administrative structure. But it also set the stage for future conflicts, as the balance of power between the emperor and the council became a source of tension. The council's secrecy and influence would later fuel suspicion and fear, especially when the empire faced its greatest challenge, the arrival of the Spanish. Among the most influential figures in the formation of the Council of Four was Tlacaele, the brilliant strategist and nephew of Itzcoatl, the fifth emperor of Tenochtitlan. Though he never held the title of emperor himself, Tlacaele wielded immense power behind the throne. He was a master of political maneuvering, shaping the ideology of the Aztec Empire and ensuring its dominance through a combination of military conquest and religious propaganda. It was Tlacaele who orchestrated the rewriting of Aztec history, erasing the tribe's humble origins and crafting a narrative that linked them to the great Toltec civilization. This myth of divine ancestry became a cornerstone of Aztec rule, justifying their expansion and reinforcing the legitimacy of their leaders. Tlacaele also played a central role in formalizing the functions of the Council of Four. Recognizing that the empire's rapid growth required a stable and secretive governing body, he ensured that the council remained independent of any single ruler. He filled its ranks with trusted allies, men who had proven their loyalty through years of service. These individuals were not merely advisors, they were decision-makers, shaping the empire's fate in ways that often went unnoticed by the public. Tlacaele himself served as the council's de facto leader for decades, guiding the policies of successive emperors and ensuring continuity in governance.
Another key figure was Montezuma Ilhuacaminah, the fifth emperor of Tenochtitlan and a close ally of Tlacaele. Unlike his uncle Itzcoatl, who had ruled during the formation of the Triple Alliance, Montezuma was the first to fully embrace the idea of empire. He expanded the Aztec territories through a combination of military might and strategic diplomacy, and under his rule, the tribute system became a powerful tool of control. The Council of Four played a crucial role in managing this system, ensuring that conquered cities remained loyal and that resources flowed smoothly into the capital. Montezuma's reign also saw the elevation of the god Huitzilopochtli as the supreme deity of the Aztec pantheon. This religious shift was not merely spiritual, it was political. By positioning Huitzilopochtli as the patron of the empire, the rulers reinforced the idea that their conquests were divinely sanctioned. The Council of Four supported this ideology, using it to justify expansion and maintain internal stability. The Council's influence extended beyond military and economic matters. It shaped the very beliefs of the people, ensuring that the empire's dominance was seen as inevitable and righteous. As the empire grew, so too did the complexity of its governance. The Council of Four became a crucial mechanism for maintaining order, especially in times of transition. When Montezuma died in 1469, the council played a decisive role in selecting his successor, ensuring that the empire did not fall into chaos. This precedent would be followed in the years to come, with the council acting as a stabilizing force amid the frequent changes in leadership. Yet, for all its power, the council remained shrouded in secrecy. Its meetings were held in private, and its deliberations were rarely made public. This secrecy was both a strength and a weakness. It allowed the council to operate efficiently, free from the distractions of public opinion, but it also bred suspicion. Many feared that the council's hidden hand controlled the empire more than the emperor himself. This perception would grow over time, especially as the empire faced external threats and internal dissent. The formation of the Council of Four was not just a bureaucratic necessity. It was a reflection of the Aztec worldview. The Aztecs believed in the cyclical nature of time and the necessity of balance. Just as the gods maintained order in the cosmos, so too did the council seek to maintain order in the empire. But as history would show, even the most carefully balanced systems could be disrupted by unforeseen forces that would soon arrive from across the sea. The Council of Four was not a rigid institution with fixed roles. Rather, it functioned as a dynamic body whose composition and responsibilities evolved over time. At its core, the council consisted of 4 high-ranking nobles, each representing one of the major city-states within the Triple Alliance. These individuals were typically drawn from the royal families of Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, ensuring that the interests of all 3 cities were represented. However, the 4th seat was often filled by a powerful noble from Tenochtitlan itself, reflecting the city's dominant role in the empire. The council's primary function was to advise the emperor on matters of governance, but its influence extended far beyond mere consultation. It played a crucial role in military planning, determining when and where to wage war, as well as in the administration of tribute, overseeing the vast network of conquered cities that supplied the empire with goods, labor, and captives for sacrifice. In times of crisis, such as when an emperor died without a clear heir, the council acted as a regent body, selecting the next ruler from among the eligible members of the royal family. This process was not always peaceful, and rival factions within the council often vied for influence, leading to internal conflicts that could shape the empire's future. One of the council's most significant responsibilities was managing the empire's religious and ideological foundations. The Aztecs believed that their continued dominance was tied to the favor of the gods, particularly Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun. The council ensured that religious rituals were carried out properly, overseeing the construction of temples, the scheduling of festivals, and the selection of captives for human sacrifice. These ceremonies were not merely acts of devotion, they were also political tools, reinforcing the emperor's divine right to rule and legitimizing the empire's expansion. Despite its immense power, the council operated in secrecy. Its meetings were held behind closed doors, away from the public eye, and its deliberations were rarely recorded in official histories. This secrecy was both a strength and a weakness. It allowed the council to make swift decisions without interference from the emperor or the general populace, but it also bred suspicion and distrust. Many within the empire believed that the council held more authority than the emperor himself. This perception would grow over time, especially as the empire faced external threats and internal dissent.
The formation of the Council of Four was not just a bureaucratic necessity, it was a reflection of the Aztec worldview. The Aztecs believed in the cyclical nature of time and the necessity of balance. Just as the gods maintained order in the cosmos, so too did the council seek to maintain order in the empire. But as history would show, even the most carefully balanced systems could be disrupted by unforeseen forces that would soon arrive from across the sea. The Council of Four was not a rigid institution with fixed roles. Rather, it functioned as a dynamic body whose composition and responsibilities evolved over time. At its core, the council consisted of 4 high-ranking nobles, each representing one of the major city-states within the Triple Alliance. These individuals were typically drawn from the royal families of Tenochtitlán, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, ensuring that the interests of all 3 cities were represented. However, the 4th seat was often filled by a powerful noble from Tenochtitlan itself, reflecting the city's dominant role in the empire. The council's primary function was to advise the emperor on matters of governance, but its influence extended far beyond mere consultation. It played a crucial role in military planning, determining when and where to wage war, as well as in the administration of tribute, overseeing the vast network of conquered cities that supplied the empire with goods, labor, and captives for sacrifice. In times of crisis, such as when an emperor died without a clear heir, the council acted as a regent body, selecting the next ruler from among the eligible members of the royal family. This process was not always peaceful, and rival factions within the council often vied for influence, leading to internal conflicts that could shape the empire's future. One of the council's most significant responsibilities was managing the empire's religious and ideological foundations. The Aztecs believed that their continued dominance was tied to the favor of the gods, particularly Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun. The council ensured that religious rituals were carried out properly, overseeing the construction of temples, the scheduling of festivals, and the selection of captives for human sacrifice. These ceremonies were not merely acts of devotion, but they were also political tools, reinforcing the emperor's divine right to rule and legitimizing the empire's expansion. Despite its immense power, the council operated in secrecy. Its meetings were held behind closed doors, away from the public eye, and its deliberations were rarely recorded in official histories.
This secrecy was both a strength and a weakness. It allowed the council to make swift decisions without interference from the emperor or the general populace, but it also fueled speculation and distrust. Many within the empire believed that the council held more authority than the emperor himself, a perception that would grow in the years to come. The council's influence was particularly evident during periods of transition. When an emperor died, the council played a decisive role in selecting his successor, ensuring that the empire did not fall into chaos. This process was not always straightforward, as different factions within the council often supported different candidates. The selection of a new ruler could be a delicate balancing act, requiring the council to navigate rivalries and alliances within the royal family. Once a new emperor was chosen, the council continued to serve as a guiding force, advising the ruler on matters of state and ensuring that the empire's policies remained consistent. Over time, the council's power became increasingly intertwined with the empire's fate. As the Aztecs expanded their territory, the need for centralized decision-making grew, and the council's role in governance expanded accordingly. However, this growing influence also made the council a target for criticism and suspicion. Some saw it as a necessary mechanism for maintaining stability, while others viewed it as an undemocratic body that operated beyond the reach of the people. These tensions would come to a head in the final years of the empire, as the arrival of the Spanish disrupted the delicate balance of power that the council had worked so hard to maintain.
One of the earliest and most defining moments in the Council of Four's history came during the War of the Flower, a brutal conflict that tested the council's ability to guide the empire through crisis. The war, which took place in the late 15th century, was not a conventional military campaign, but a ritualized battle known as a Flower War, a series of prearranged skirmishes between the Aztecs and their rivals, particularly the city of Tlaxcala. These wars were designed to provide captives for sacrifice, ensuring the gods' continued favor. However, the War of the Flower of 1496 was different. It was not a ritual, but a real war, one that threatened the very foundations of the empire. At the heart of the conflict was a dispute over tribute. The city of Tlaxcala, long a thorn in the Aztec side, had refused to submit to the empire despite decades of pressure. The Council of Four, recognizing the growing instability in the eastern provinces, decided that a decisive military campaign was necessary. The council convened in secret, weighing the risks and benefits of war. Some members argued that an open campaign against Tlaxcala would drain resources and divert attention from other regions that required control. Others, particularly those aligned with the military elite, insisted that failure to act would embolden other rebellious city-states. After days of deliberation, the council reached a decision. The empire would launch a full-scale invasion of Tlaxcala. The invasion was to be led by the Emperor Ahuizotl, who had proven himself a formidable warrior in previous conquests. However, the council did not merely issue orders. It played an active role in the planning and execution of the war. It coordinated the mobilization of troops, ensured the supply of food and weapons, and managed the logistics of moving thousands of warriors across the Valley of Mexico. The invasion began in the spring of 1496. Aztec forces, bolstered by warriors from Texcoco and Tlacopan, marched toward Tlaxcala, expecting a swift victory. However, the Tlaxcalans had anticipated the attack and had prepared their defenses accordingly. The ensuing battles were brutal, with neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The war dragged on for months, and the Aztec forces found themselves struggling to maintain their supply lines. As the war continued, tensions within the Council of Four grew. Some members began to question the wisdom of the campaign, arguing that the cost in lives and resources was too high. Others, particularly those with strong military ties, insisted that retreat would be seen as a sign of weakness. The council was divided, and for the first time in its history, its unity was tested. Faced with this internal discord, the council took an unprecedented step. It summoned the emperor himself to a closed-door session to discuss the war's progress. This meeting, held in the palace of Tenochtitlan, was one of the few times an emperor was directly involved in council deliberations. Ahuizotl, though a warrior by nature, listened carefully to the arguments presented by the council members. After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. The empire would continue the war, but with a new strategy. Instead of a direct assault on Tlaxcala, the Aztecs would focus on weakening the city's allies, cutting off its access to resources and forcing it into submission. The shift in strategy proved effective. Over the next year, the Aztecs launched a series of smaller campaigns against Tlaxcala's allies, isolating the city and weakening its position. By 1497, Tlaxcala was on the brink of collapse. The council, sensing an opportunity, sent envoys to negotiate a truce. The Tlaxcalans, recognizing their dire situation, agreed to a temporary peace, though they remained independent of the empire. The War of the Flower marked a turning point for the Council of Four. It demonstrated the Council's ability to adapt in times of crisis and reinforced its role as a stabilizing force within the empire. However, it also exposed the fragility of its unity. The divisions that had emerged during the war would resurface in the years to come, particularly as the empire faced new challenges from both within and beyond its borders. The year was 1519, and the Aztec Empire stood at the height of its power. The Council of Four had long operated in the shadows, guiding the empire through wars, political crises, and internal struggles, yet nothing in its history had prepared it for the arrival of the Spaniards. When Hernán Cortés and his small force of conquistadors landed on the shores of the Yucatan Peninsula, they brought with them not just weapons and horses, but an entirely new kind of threat, one that would test the council's power in ways never before imagined. At first, the council was uncertain how to respond. Reports of strange men arriving from the east, clad in metal and riding beasts never before seen in the land, reached Tenochtitlan like whispers carried by the wind. Montezuma II, the reigning emperor, hesitated. He'd heard the prophecies, whispers of the return of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god who is said to come from the east. Was this the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, or merely another challenge to be met with force? The council, ever cautious, advised restraint. They'd seen foreign traders before, and they knew that rash decisions could lead to disaster. But as the Spaniards moved inland, their presence became impossible to ignore. Cortés, a cunning and ambitious leader, quickly realized that the Aztec Empire, for all its might, was not a monolith. The conquered city-states chafed under Aztec rule, and many saw the arrival of the Europeans as an opportunity for rebellion. The council understood this danger all too well. If the Spaniards managed to forge alliances with these discontented provinces, the empire's foundations could crumble. A heated debate erupted within the council chambers. Some members argued that Montezuma should personally meet the Spaniards to assess their strength and intentions. Others, particularly those with military ties, insisted that the invaders should be destroyed before they could gain a foothold. The council was divided, and for the first time in its history, it faced a threat that could not be managed through diplomacy or ritualized warfare.
Montezuma, caught between fear and uncertainty, chose a path that would seal the empire's fate. He sent gifts to the Spaniards, gold, turquoise, and fine cotton garments, hoping to appease them. But the gifts had the opposite effect. To Cortés, they were a sign of weakness, a signal that the Aztecs could be manipulated. When Cortés reached Tenochtitlan, Montezuma welcomed him into the city, allowing the Spaniards to enter the very heart of the empire. Inside the city, the council watched in horror as the Spaniards took control. Cortés, ever the strategist, used Montezuma as a puppet ruler, forcing him to issue commands that served Spanish interests. The council, which had long operated in secrecy, found itself powerless. The emperor, once their greatest ally, was now a prisoner in his own palace. The council tried to act, sending envoys to rally the empire's warriors, but their messages were intercepted. The Spaniards had gained the upper hand. Then came the massacre at the Great Temple. In the absence of Cortés, who had left the city to deal with a rival Spanish force, his lieutenant, Pedro de Alvarado, ordered the slaughter of Aztec nobles and priests during a sacred festival. The council, already weakened, was thrown into chaos. The people, once loyal to the emperor, turned against him, blaming him for allowing the Spaniards to defile their holy sites. The council's authority crumbled as the city erupted into violence. Montezuma, realizing too late the mistake he had made, was killed. Whether by the Spaniards or by his own people remains a mystery. His death marked the end of the council's influence. Without a strong emperor to guide them, the remaining members of the council struggled to maintain order. They named a new emperor, Cuitlahuac, who tried to rally the city's defenses, but the damage was done. The empire, once held together by the careful balance of power maintained by the council, was now unraveling. The fall of Tenochtitlan was not just the fall of a city, it was the fall of a system. The Council of Four, which had once dictated the fate of an empire, had been rendered powerless by an enemy it could not understand. The Spaniards, with their steel weapons and foreign alliances, had shattered the delicate balance that had kept the Aztecs in power for generations. The council, once the unseen hand behind the throne, had been exposed, its influence stripped away by the tides of history. With Montezuma dead and the city in chaos, the Council of Four found itself in a desperate struggle to regain control. The remaining members of the council, now operating in secrecy, attempted to rally the empire's military forces. They appointed Cuitlahuac as the new emperor, hoping his leadership would unite the people against the Spanish invaders. But the damage had already been done. The Spaniards had established a foothold in the heart of the empire, and their alliances with discontented city-states, particularly the Tlaxcalans, gave them a decisive advantage. The council's efforts to organize a defense were hampered by the sheer scale of the crisis. The Spaniards had not only brought superior weapons, but also disease, smallpox, which spread rapidly through the densely populated city of Tenochtitlan. The disease ravaged the population, killing thousands, including Cuitlahuac himself. Without a strong leader, the council struggled to maintain order. Some members fled the city, while others were captured or executed by the Spaniards. Those who remained attempted to coordinate resistance, but without the emperor's authority, their commands were often ignored. The final blow came in 1521, when Cortés launched a full-scale siege on Tenochtitlan. The city, weakened by disease and internal discord, could not withstand the assault. The Spaniards, aided by their indigenous allies, systematically dismantled the city's defenses, cutting off food and water supplies. The council, now reduced to a handful of surviving members, made one last attempt to negotiate a truce. But by then, the Spaniards had no interest in diplomacy. They wanted complete control. As the city fell, the Council of Four ceased to exist. Its members either perished in the fighting or disappeared into exile. The last known member of the council, a high-ranking noble named Tlacochcalcatl, was captured by the Spaniards and later executed. With his death, the council's influence was extinguished, and the Aztec Empire was no more.
The fall of the council marked the end of an era. For decades, it had operated in the shadows, guiding the empire through war and peace, shaping its policies and ensuring its survival. But when the greatest threat in its history arrived, the council proved powerless to stop it. The Spaniards, with their foreign weapons and alliances, had shattered the delicate balance of power that had sustained the empire for generations. The council, once the unseen hand behind the throne, had been exposed, its influence stripped away by the tides of history.
Though the Council of Four was no more, its influence did not vanish with the fall of Tenochtitlan. The remnants of the Aztec elite, those who had once served on the council or advised its members, adapted to the new Spanish order. Some became intermediaries between the conquistadors and the native population, using their knowledge of governance to maintain a degree of control. Others faded into obscurity, their names lost to history. Yet the structures they had built, the tribute system, the military hierarchy, and the religious institutions were not entirely dismantled. The Spanish, recognizing the efficiency of Aztec administration, often repurposed it to serve their own colonial rule. The council's legacy also lived on in the memory of the Nahuatl-speaking peoples. Though the empire had fallen, the idea of a ruling body that could guide a nation through crisis remained a powerful one. In the centuries that followed, indigenous leaders in New Spain would draw upon the traditions of the Aztec Council, blending them with Spanish colonial structures to maintain a degree of autonomy. The concept of collective leadership, where decisions were made by a group rather than a single ruler, persisted in various forms, influencing governance in the region long after the last emperor had fallen. Even today, the story of the Council of Four serves as a reminder of the complexities of power. It was not a single ruler who shaped the fate of the Aztec Empire, but a group of men who operated behind the scenes, making decisions that determined the course of history. Their rise and fall offer a lesson in the fragility of authority, the dangers of secrecy, and the consequences of underestimating an enemy. The council was a product of its time, a mechanism designed to maintain order in a rapidly expanding empire. But when faced with an unprecedented threat, it could not adapt quickly enough. The mystery of the council endures. While the names of emperors like Montezuma and Ahuizotl are known to history, the identities of the council's members remain largely unknown. Did they foresee the empire's downfall? Did they try to warn their emperor? Did they believe until the very end that they could still shape the empire's fate? These questions may never be answered, but they continue to fuel the imagination of historians and storytellers alike. The Council of Four was more than a political institution. It was a symbol of the Aztec worldview. It embodied the belief that power was not meant to rest in the hands of one individual, but shared among those who could ensure the stability of the realm. Its story is not just one of intrigue and hidden influence, but of a civilization that, despite its fall, left behind a legacy that continues to shape our understanding of governance, leadership, and the delicate balance of power. One of the lesser-known but crucial aspects of the Council of Four's influence was its deep connection to the Aztec priesthood. While the council was primarily a political and military body, its decisions were often intertwined with religious doctrine. The Aztecs believed that the gods required constant appeasement through sacrifice, and it was the priesthood that determined the timing and scale of these rituals. However, the council played a vital role in approving and overseeing these ceremonies, ensuring that they aligned with the empire's broader political goals. The high priests of major temples, particularly those dedicated to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, were often consulted by the council before major military campaigns or policy decisions. These priests interpreted omens and dreams, advising the council on whether the gods favored a particular course of action. In some cases, the council would delay or alter its plans based on these religious interpretations. This interplay between politics and religion was not merely symbolic, it was a practical necessity. The people of the empire believed that the success of their rulers depended on divine favor, and the council understood that maintaining this belief was essential for stability. One of the most striking examples of this relationship was the council's role in the selection of sacrificial victims. While the priests performed the actual ceremonies, the council was responsible for ensuring that the empire captured enough prisoners to meet the demands of the gods. This led to the practice of flower wars. ritualized battles designed to secure captives for sacrifice. The council oversaw these conflicts, determining which city-states would be targeted and when such campaigns would take place. This system allowed the empire to maintain religious legitimacy while also keeping potential rivals in check. However, this reliance on religious justification for political decisions also had consequences. When omens were interpreted as unfavorable, the council sometimes found itself paralyzed, unable to act without risking divine wrath. This hesitation could prove costly, as seen in the events leading up to the Spanish conquest. The council's reluctance to take decisive action against the invaders was partly due to conflicting religious interpretations. Some priests saw the Spaniards as harbingers of doom, while others believed they were divine messengers. This uncertainty weakened the council's ability to respond effectively, contributing to the empire's downfall. The connection between the council and the priesthood highlights the complexity of Aztec governance. Power was not solely held by rulers or military leaders, but distributed among various institutions, each with its own influence. The council's ability to navigate this intricate web of religious and political authority was one of its greatest strengths, but also one of its vulnerabilities. When the balance between these forces was disrupted, as it was with the arrival of the Spanish, the entire system began to unravel.
The Aztec Empire thrived on a meticulously organized tribute system, and the Council of Four played a central role in its administration. Tribute was not merely a means of taxation, it was the lifeblood of the empire, ensuring the flow of resources that sustained the capital, funded military campaigns, and reinforced the emperor's authority. The council oversaw the collection of goods from conquered city-states, ranging from food and textiles to precious metals and human captives. These tributes were not only economic, but also symbolic, serving as a constant reminder of the empire's dominance. Each year, the council dispatched tribute collectors, known as calpichque, to the provinces under Aztec control. These officials were responsible for assessing the wealth of each region and determining the amount of tribute to be paid. The council ensured that the system remained efficient, punishing those who failed to meet their quotas and rewarding those who exceeded them. In some cases, entire cities were relocated or restructured to better serve the empire's economic needs. The council's ability to manage this vast network of tribute collection was a testament to its organizational prowess. However, the tribute system also sowed the seeds of rebellion. Many of the conquered city-states resented the heavy demands placed upon them, and the council was well aware of the growing discontent. To maintain control, it employed a dual strategy: military enforcement and strategic alliances. Garrisons were stationed in key locations to ensure compliance, while the council also offered incentives to loyal rulers, granting them privileges and autonomy in exchange for continued service to the empire. The breakdown of this system played a crucial role in the empire's downfall. When the Spanish arrived, they exploited the resentment of the tribute-paying provinces, promising freedom from Aztec rule in exchange for military support. The council, which had long relied on the tribute system to maintain stability, found itself unable to counter this shift in loyalty. As more city-states defected to the Spanish side, the empire's economic foundation crumbled, hastening its collapse. The selection of a new emperor was one of the most critical functions of the Council of Four, and its role in this process was shrouded in secrecy. Unlike in many other monarchies where succession followed a strict hereditary line, the Aztecs did not have a clear system for choosing their rulers. Instead, the council played a decisive role in selecting the next emperor from among the eligible members of the royal family. This process was not based on birth order, but on a combination of military prowess, political acumen, and perceived divine favor. When an emperor died, the council convened in private to deliberate on the next ruler. The candidates were typically the sons or brothers of the previous emperor, but not all were considered equally viable. The council evaluated each contender's experience in warfare, their ability to command loyalty, and their connections to the priesthood and military elite. In some cases, the council favored a younger, more energetic candidate who could lead the empire through a period of expansion, while in others they might choose an older, more experienced noble who could maintain stability. This system allowed the council to maintain a degree of control over the empire, ensuring that the emperor was not an absolute ruler, but rather a figure who needed the council's support to govern effectively. However, it also led to intense rivalries and political maneuvering. Different factions within the council often backed different candidates, and the selection process could become a battleground of alliances and betrayals. One of the most dramatic examples of this occurred after the death of the Emperor Ahuizotl in 1502. His successor, Montezuma II, was chosen over several other potential candidates, including his cousin Cuitlahuac. The council's decision was influenced by Montezuma's military reputation and his close ties to the priesthood, which made him a more acceptable choice to the religious elite. However, this decision would later prove controversial, as Montezuma's indecisiveness during the Spanish conquest would contribute to the empire's downfall. The council's influence in the selection of emperors was not always accepted without resistance. In some cases, the chosen ruler faced opposition from rival factions within the nobility, leading to internal conflicts that weakened the empire. The council, aware of the dangers of instability, often took steps to eliminate potential rivals, ensuring that the newly crowned emperor could rule without challenge. These measures included forced exile, imprisonment, or even execution of those deemed a threat to the new ruler's authority.
Ultimately, the council's role in the succession of emperors was both a strength and a weakness of the Aztec political system. It allowed for the selection of capable leaders, but it also created a system where power was constantly contested, making the empire vulnerable to internal strife. When the Spanish arrived, this very system would be exploited, as rival factions within the nobility saw an opportunity to overthrow the ruling elite and seize power for themselves. The Council of Four played a crucial role in shaping the Aztec Empire's military campaigns, ensuring that every war was not only a conquest, but also a demonstration of the empire's power. While the emperor was the official commander-in-chief, the council was responsible for planning military strategies, selecting generals, and determining the timing of campaigns. This system allowed for a level of coordination that made the Aztec military one of the most effective in Mesoamerica. One of the council's key responsibilities was overseeing the recruitment and training of warriors. The Aztec military was divided into different ranks, from the common soldiers to the elite jaguar and eagle warriors. The council ensured that each campaign was led by experienced commanders, often selecting generals from among the nobility or from the ranks of the most decorated warriors. These leaders were expected to report directly to the council, which maintained tight control over military operations. The council also played a vital role in intelligence gathering. Before launching a campaign, the Aztecs sent spies and messengers to assess the strength of their enemies. These reports were analyzed by the council, which determined whether to launch a full-scale invasion, negotiate a truce, or initiate a series of smaller raids. This strategic approach allowed the Aztecs to expand their empire with minimal resistance, as many city-states chose to submit rather than face the full force of the Aztec military. However, the council's influence over military decisions was not without controversy. Some emperors, particularly those with strong military backgrounds, sought greater autonomy in leading campaigns. This tension came to a head during the reign of Tizoc, who struggled to assert his authority over the council. His military campaigns were seen as ineffective, and rumors spread that the council was deliberately undermining his leadership to maintain control over the empire's expansion. Despite these internal struggles, the council's military strategies were largely successful. The Aztecs developed a system of indirect conquest, where newly subjugated city-states were allowed to retain their local rulers as long as they paid tribute and provided warriors for future campaigns. This system allowed the empire to expand rapidly without overextending its resources.
The council ensured that conquered regions were integrated into the empire's administrative structure, appointing loyal officials to oversee tribute collection and maintain order. The council's military influence extended beyond warfare. It also played a role in the organization of the empire's garrisons, ensuring that key provinces were well defended against rebellion. These garrisons were strategically placed in regions that had previously resisted Aztec rule, such as the Toluca Valley and the Southern Highlands. The council oversaw the rotation of troops, ensuring that soldiers were not stationed in their home regions, which could lead to divided loyalties. However, the council's reliance on a centralized military system would prove to be a weakness when the Spanish arrived. The Aztecs were accustomed to fighting traditional Mesoamerican wars, where battles were fought in open fields and victories were determined by capturing enemy warriors for sacrifice. The Spanish, with their horses, steel weapons, and gunpowder, introduced a style of warfare that the Aztecs had never encountered. The council, accustomed to making decisions based on past experiences, struggled to adapt to this new threat. By the time it realized the need for a different strategy, it was already too late. While the Council of Four is often associated with military strategy and internal governance, its influence extended deeply into the realm of diplomacy. The Aztec Empire was not a monolithic entity. It was a complex web of alliances, tributary states, and rival factions. Maintaining this intricate balance required careful negotiation, and the council played a central role in forging and managing these relationships. Through a combination of coercion, strategic marriages, and calculated concessions, the council ensured that the empire remained stable and its influence unchallenged. One of the council's primary diplomatic tools was the use of tribute as a means of securing loyalty. Conquered city-states were not simply subjugated, they were integrated into the empire's economic and political framework. The council determined the amount of tribute each province was required to pay, often tailoring these demands to the region's resources. In return, the council offered protection from external threats and, in some cases, allowed local rulers to retain a degree of autonomy. This system allowed the empire to expand rapidly without the need for constant military intervention, as many city-states chose to submit rather than face the full force of the Aztec military. Marriage alliances were another key strategy employed by the council. The nobility of Tenochtitlan frequently intermarried with the ruling families of allied city-states, strengthening political ties and ensuring loyalty. These marriages were not merely symbolic. They were carefully arranged by the council to reinforce the empire's influence. A well-placed marriage could turn a potential rival into a trusted ally, and the council was adept at using this method to maintain control over the vast territories under Aztec rule.
However, diplomacy was not always about forging alliances. It was also about managing dissent. The council was acutely aware of the fragile nature of the empire's unity, and it worked to suppress any signs of rebellion before they could escalate. When a city-state showed signs of defiance, the council would often send envoys to negotiate a resolution. If diplomacy failed, military force was swiftly deployed to restore order. This dual approach, offering incentives for loyalty while maintaining the threat of retribution, allowed the council to maintain control over a sprawling and diverse empire. The council's diplomatic efforts were not limited to the empire's internal affairs. It also played a role in managing relations with foreign powers. The Aztecs had limited contact with civilizations outside of Mesoamerica, but they were aware of the existence of distant trading partners and potential threats. The council monitored these external relationships, ensuring that the empire's borders remained secure. When necessary, it dispatched emissaries to gather intelligence and establish trade agreements, further expanding the empire's influence. Despite its successes, the council's diplomatic strategies were not infallible. The arrival of the Spanish exposed the limitations of its approach. The council had long relied on a system of tribute and alliances to maintain stability, but these methods proved ineffective against an enemy that did not adhere to the same rules of engagement. The Spanish, with their superior weapons and willingness to exploit internal divisions, quickly turned the empire's diplomatic weaknesses into opportunities for conquest. The council, accustomed to managing conflicts through negotiation and coercion, found itself unable to counter this new kind of threat.
The fall of the Aztec Empire was not solely a result of military defeat. It was also a failure of diplomacy. The council, which had spent decades maintaining a delicate balance of power, was unable to adapt to the unprecedented challenge posed by the Spanish. Its reliance on traditional methods of governance and alliance building left it ill-prepared for an enemy that did not adhere to the same framework. In the end, the very strategies that had ensured the empire's dominance for so long became its greatest vulnerability when faced with an adversary that played by an entirely different set of rules. As the Spanish tightened their grip on Tenochtitlan, the Council of Four faced its most desperate hour. The city, once the beating heart of the empire, had become a battleground. The streets were filled with smoke and the cries of the wounded as Aztec warriors fought desperately to defend their capital. The council, now reduced to a handful of surviving members, convened in the Palace of Itzcali, one of the last strongholds still under Aztec control. Here, in the dim light of torches, the remaining nobles made their final decisions. There was no consensus among them. Some argued that the city should be abandoned, that the empire's remnants should retreat into the mountains and regroup. Others insisted that surrender was unthinkable, that the gods would not allow the Aztecs to fall so easily. The council, once a body of calculated strategists, had become a group of men grasping at fading hope. The last emperor, Cuauhtémoc, had taken command after the death of Cuitlahuac, but even he could not unite the fractured leadership. The council's authority, once absolute, was slipping away. Desperation led to bold and perhaps reckless decisions. One faction within the council proposed a final assault on the Spanish stronghold in the city. They believed that if the Spaniards could be driven out, the tide of battle might turn. Another faction, more pragmatic, suggested a negotiated surrender, hoping that the Spanish would show mercy if the city was handed over peacefully. But Cuauhtémoc, determined to fight to the end, rejected both options. The council, divided and exhausted, could do little but watch as the empire crumbled around them. As the siege wore on, the council's influence diminished further. The people of Tenochtitlan, starving and diseased, no longer looked to the nobles for guidance. The warriors, once loyal to the emperor, began to question whether the fight was worth the cost. The council, which had once dictated the fate of the empire, found itself powerless. Its members, once feared and respected, were reduced to fugitives, hiding in the ruins of the city as the Spanish advanced. In the end, the council's final act was not one of defiance, but of surrender. When Cuauhtémoc was captured by the Spaniards, the last remnants of the council followed him into captivity. Some were executed, others were forced into servitude, and a few managed to escape into the wilderness, their names lost to history. The Council of Four, which had once ruled in secret, had met its end in the open light of conquest. Its influence, once the unseen hand guiding the empire, was extinguished in the fires of Tenochtitlan's destruction. Though the Council of Four was dismantled with the fall of Tenochtitlan, its legacy did not vanish entirely. The Spanish, recognizing the efficiency of Aztec administration, incorporated many of its structures into their colonial system. Indigenous leaders who had once served on the council or advised its members were often appointed as local rulers under Spanish rule, ensuring continuity in governance. These leaders, known as caciques, maintained a degree of authority over their communities, blending Aztec traditions with Spanish colonial policies. The tribute system, which had been the backbone of the Aztec economy, was adapted by the Spanish into the encomienda system, where indigenous labor was directed toward the benefit of Spanish landowners. The council's role in managing tribute collection was thus repurposed, with former administrators now overseeing the extraction of resources for the new colonial regime. In this way, the council's influence endured, albeit in a transformed form. The military strategies of the Aztecs, shaped by the council's oversight, also left a lasting impact. The Spanish, despite their technological advantages, relied heavily on indigenous allies to defeat the Aztecs. The lessons learned from the Aztec military hierarchy and alliance-building strategies would later inform Spanish tactics in other conquests across the Americas. The council's role in organizing and directing military campaigns, though no longer in effect, had contributed to the development of a system that would be studied and emulated by future generations. Even in the realm of religion, the council's influence persisted. The fusion of Aztec and Catholic beliefs that emerged in colonial Mexico was in part a result of the council's historical role in intertwining governance with religious doctrine. The syncretism that developed between indigenous rituals and Christian practices reflected the deep-rooted connection between politics and faith that the council had once maintained. Though the Council of Four was no longer a governing body, its structures and strategies lived on, shaping the course of history long after its members had faded into obscurity. Though the Council of Four disappeared with the fall of the Aztec Empire, its story has not been forgotten. Historians, archaeologists, and storytellers continued to explore its influence, piecing together fragments of its existence from colonial records, indigenous accounts, and archaeological discoveries. The Council's secrecy, once a source of power, has now become a source of fascination, fueling debates about its true role in Aztec governance. Some scholars argue that the council was a stabilizing force, ensuring the empire's longevity through careful planning and collective decision-making. Others suggest that its secrecy and internal rivalries contributed to the empire's downfall, leaving it vulnerable to external threats. Modern interpretations of the council vary widely. In literature and film, it is often depicted as a clandestine body of advisors, manipulating events behind the scenes, much like the secret councils of medieval Europe. In academic circles, researchers continue to analyze the council's influence on military campaigns, tribute collection, and religious policy, seeking to understand how a group of men, largely unknown to history, could hold such sway over an empire. Archaeological excavations in Tenochtitlan have uncovered evidence of council chambers and administrative centers, offering glimpses into the daily workings of this enigmatic institution. Beyond academia, the council's legacy resonates in discussions of governance and leadership. The idea of a ruling body that operates behind the scenes, guiding a nation through crisis, remains relevant in modern political discourse. The Aztec Council of Four serves as a case study in the balance between centralized authority and collective decision-making, offering lessons on the strengths and weaknesses of such systems. Its story reminds us that power is not always visible, and that history is often shaped by the invisible forces. The story of the Council of Four is more than a tale of intrigue and hidden power. It is a lesson in the complexities of governance, the fragility of authority, and the enduring influence of unseen forces. The Council's ability to maintain stability in a vast and diverse empire speaks to the effectiveness of collective leadership, yet its downfall reveals the dangers of secrecy and internal division. The Aztecs, for all their military might and religious devotion, could not withstand the combined forces of disease, rebellion, and foreign conquest. The council, which had once been the empire's guiding hand, found itself powerless in the face of an enemy that did not play by the same rules. This history reminds us that no system of governance, no matter how carefully constructed, is immune to collapse. The council's reliance on tradition and established methods left it unprepared for the unprecedented challenges of the Spanish invasion. Its secrecy, once a strength, became a weakness when the empire needed transparency and swift action. The lesson is clear. Adaptability is as crucial as authority. Even the most powerful institutions can falter when they fail to recognize the shifting tides of history. Yet the council's influence did not vanish entirely. Its structures and strategies lived on, repurposed by the Spanish and woven into the fabric of colonial governance. The tribute system, the military hierarchy, and the fusion of politics and religion all endured in new forms, shaping the future of Mesoamerica. The council may have fallen, but its legacy continued to shape the course of history. For modern readers, the story of the Council of Four offers more than just a glimpse into the past. It provides a framework for understanding the dynamics of power, leadership, and resilience. It challenges us to look beyond the surface of history and consider the hidden forces that shape civilizations. And it reminds us that even in the darkest moments, the echoes of the past can still be heard, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of the present.